See, these are verses we haven't read carefully. That's why we compare ourselves with others and say, I'm better than that person. I'm not watching pornography like that person. I just get angry once in a while. Zero. You're as bad as that guy who's watching pornography every day. How many of you who lose your temper believe that you're as bad as the man who's watching pornography every single day? I don't think you believe that, right? You think you're a little better than that person. That's because you haven't read James chapter 2 and verse 10. Because the one who gave one commandment also gave the other. The question is not what the commandment is, the question is who gave it. And if he's given a number of commandments and you violate it, it's not a question of how many commandments you kept. You violated the one who gave it. That's the point. And here it is speaking about a sin which almost nobody considers a sin. I have seen in my life, even among CFC people, this is one of the biggest sins of all. You know what it is? Verse 9, partiality. Very few brothers, sisters I've met in my life who have really fought against partiality and overcome it and determined, I will never be partial to anyone in my life. God can have a great ministry for you if you overcome this one sin. Are you partial towards someone? That's what he's speaking of. He's got a whole number of verses. In verse 1, he begins with personal favoritism, an attitude of personal favoritism. It's a sin. That means you, as far as the church is concerned, you treat a man who's rich, verse 2, in a special way, and you ignore the fellow who's poor. That's partiality. Basically, what it means is if you cannot look at a highly educated, rich person who's a believer in exactly the same way, you cannot look at a poor person who's thoroughly uneducated and crude. If you can't look at him in exactly the same way as to the rich person, you've got partiality. I see that particularly in conferences. I particularly see that when foreigners come here to CFC. You find certain believers, brothers and sisters, they all go and speak to that person who's come from abroad. You never see them going and meeting the people who come from Tamil Nadu during the conference. Oh, no, they're not no time. They are the biggest sinners of partiality I have seen, and I've seen it for 42 years. You examine yourself whether you're like that. You ask yourself, how much time have you spent trying to talk to people from Tamil Nadu? I've seen people children of Tamil families who say we don't know Tamil. I'm not from a Tamil family. I just learned. I speak a lot of mistakes, but I learned it because I wanted to speak to these people, not because I grew up speaking it. I said, I'm determined in my life that I will have no partiality. I will never care for a person's skin, whether it's white or yellow or brown. I'll never care for his income. I'll never care for his education. I will not even care whether he's an elder brother or somebody who came yesterday to the church. I will not show partiality because I know then I'm as guilty as watching pornography every day, as guilty as killing people. I take God's word seriously. If you show partiality, verse 9, you're committing a sin and you're convicted as a transgressor. And you keep all the rest of the law, but you stumble in partiality, it's as good as murdering, as good as watching pornography, as good as doing the worst possible sins. I take it seriously. I believe God's word. And I'll tell you what has happened to me. Because I believed God's word, God helped me to overcome it. And it has changed my life. And I've got revelation from God. You ask yourself, if you're not getting revelation from God continuously, it's because you ignore it as something very not so serious. Which is not so serious. If God has commanded something, it's serious. He says, verse 6, you have dishonored the poor man. You've dishonored someone, verse 5, whom God has honored. God honors somebody and you dishonor him. Very serious. Ask God to make you free from partiality in the way you treat all brothers and sisters. I can stand before God and say, Lord, I have no partiality to Malayalis or to educated people or dark-skinned or white-skinned or any other skin. I'm not partial to educated people, uneducated people, elders, junior brothers. Sin is sin wherever it's found. Take that attitude in the new year. Say, Lord, I'm not going to grade sins as murder is up there, adultery is up here, and partiality. That's not such a big thing. Then you haven't read James chapter 2.